What is up, everybody? I'm No Lux Given here with your afternoon snap, and today we're going to be taking a look at this Devil Dinosaur Quinjet list, which I used to hit Infinite this season. We're going to be taking a look at the actual games that got me to Infinite. Yesterday we started at rank 97.5, and today we're starting at rank 99.5, so we only have a few more cubes to go. But before we jump into the gameplay, I want to talk about the deck for a second first, and exactly why I am playing all of these specific cards. Now, if you do just want to jump into the gameplay, I'll make that easy for you down below. But I figured I would break it down for those people that are interested. One thing that I think that is really cool about the deck, as I say in the thumbnail and title of this video, it's kind of like a budget deck. There's no Series 4 or Series 5 cards in it. There's also no Silver Surfer. If I had Silver Surfer, might be playing him, but you can still get away without purchasing the $10 Season Pass cards and come up with some pretty good decks. For starters, half of this deck is just good cards. That's why Den for Marvel Snap Zone, where I got this deck list, calls it Devil Dinosaur Good Cards Pile. You've got Leader and Arrow, which are pretty ubiquitous right now, basically everywhere on the ladder, for being really dang strong. And then you also have some nice tech options in the form of Cosmo and Shang-Chi. Armor does do some work in the deck to protect your Quinjet and your Devil Dinosaur from your opponent's Shang-Chis and also Killmongers, but for the most part, Armor I've found to just be kind of a tech card that also has some interesting interactions in certain locations. And then to round out just the good stuff, we've got Lizard and Maximus, which are strong cards in that they are giving you more power than you would typically get for that amount of energy, and then they come with a little bit of a drawback. Lizard's drawback, I think, is a little bit more severe, where Maximus, a lot of times, you don't have to care that your opponent's drawing more cards because you're going to be playing really powerful cards yourself. Though, as we looked at a bunch yesterday, you can mitigate Maximus's drawback by playing it in the same location that Cosmo is in. I will say that the weakest aspect of this deck, after playing it for a whole bunch of games, are these 2-drops. Lizard, I think, sometimes doesn't pull his weight, just being 2 cost for 2 power, and might rather be Scorpion, so that way you're disrupting your opponent a little bit while still adding the same amount of power to the board. Sentinel is cute, pumps up your Devil Dinosaur or keeps your Devil Dinosaur at the same size, but sometimes Sentinel gets in the way because you don't actually want to be redrawing cards, so that way you can find better cards off of your Moon Girl by being able to empty your hand. I do think that Armor, surprisingly, is the strongest of these 2-cost cards in the deck, though. Probably wouldn't cut that, but I could see tweaking around or messing around with some different things besides Sentinel and Lizard. I should say too that if you haven't already seen yesterday's video, go back and check that out. It does a really good job to illustrate all of the powerful options that this deck has. Leader, Arrow, obviously I don't have to say too much more about these cards. If you're playing Marvel Snap right now, you're seeing them everywhere. They're super powerful. Shang-Chi, I think, was also highlighted really well yesterday, as was Quinjet. And Quinjet really is trying to do one main thing in this deck. I would say that the interactions with Sentinel are kind of like a side thing. It's cute, but that's not really why Quinjet is in this deck, for my money. The main reason that you have Quinjet is for Moon Girl. Moon Girl gives you an additional copy of Leader, specifically, that only costs 5. That allows you to play a Leader on turn 5 and turn 6, and if you thought Leader was everywhere, well, imagine playing it on both final turns of the game. That can obviously get pretty crazy. And then White Queen kind of doing a similar thing. Sometimes you'll White Queen and you'll steal your opponent's Leader because it's everywhere. Sometimes you'll White Queen and you'll steal one of their big bombs, and then you can play that on turn 5 now that it costs 1 less due to Quinjet. And then turn 6, you can play Leader and play their big bomb again. So a lot of different options that Quinjet brings with some of those cards that add cards to your hand, and then because you are playing into those interactions, Devil Dinosaur just winds up being a little bit bigger as well. And then there's always the classic combo of Moon Girl into Devil Dinosaur, which gives you some pretty big power spikes. Let me know if you enjoyed this deck breakdown and if you want to see more like it in the future. Let's get into that gameplay now and get infinite. Like I said, we're already at 99.5, and this game's gonna bring us to 99.6. Sokovia discards my opponent's Cerebro, so I snap, which causes them to retreat. Pretty straightforward, but hey, I'll take the cube. This game does have some interesting locations, though I'll be honest, it's still kind of a vanilla game. Not super exciting. We're gonna play a turn 2 Sentinel and a turn 3 Maximus, just to maximize our power, but we are giving my opponent some options. And then X-Mansion reveals that we're grabbing a Domino, and my opponent gets a free Ronin, which is just terrible against this deck, or really good against this deck, depending on which side of the table you're sitting on. But we obviously want to keep our hand big to have a big Devil Dinosaur, but Ronin now gets to steal all of that power for free. So pretty awkward. On this turn, I just try to dump cards out from my hand. That way we are potentially shrinking that Ronin, but it's going to be tough because I think I'm still going to want to play Devil Dinosaur eventually. My opponent also broods into my Lizard, which is kind of terrible, and now we kind of have a better idea of what they're doing. They're a Silver Surfer, maybe a Silver Surfer Patriot list, though they haven't played anything super impressive just yet. I think we might have a chance on this one. I'm going to play Devil Dinosaur into the X-Mansion. That'll at least trade with the Ronin, and then we'll be ahead a little bit there because of the Sentinel and the Domino, and my opponent takes a huge lead over into that first Monster Island, or second Monster Island. It's the mirrored Monster Island. I don't know what's more appropriate to call it. And initially, my thought is if we Shang-Chi their monster in that first location, we should be able to get a absolutely massive power lead. And then from there, I'm just gonna strengthen my lead in one of the other two locations with my remaining Sentinel. And then I actually just decided to play that in the Monster Island as well, just in case they play something like a Silver Surfer. And then I realized that all of that is absolutely horrible because there's an armor in that location that we played. Almost forgot about it though, to be totally honest. And instead, we're going to Shang-Chi in that center location, which I think is also potentially a better play. We get to blow up that monster, and now we're winning by 18 in that center location, which is definitely enough, but is the Sentinel going to be enough to win us in the X-Mansion? Ironheart flips over, that's going to add 2 more power to Ronin, and then Silver Surfer adds power back at the other locations. So we do still get the win. And that puts me up to 99.8, so we are super close to hitting infinite. My opponent has the turn 1 Quinjet, which I know from experience playing this deck is extremely powerful, so I'm already a little bit nervous, and turns out I should have checked my opponent's deck size. They're not playing the same deck. They're actually playing with some stones. They're playing a Thanos deck, and this is a really good start for the Thanos deck. Turn 1 Quinjet into turn 2 Angela plus Mind Stone, also Space Stone so that you can move some things around and pump up Angela even further. This is just a really fantastic start for the deck. And then they have Sakaar, which now we are protecting their Quinjet, and Reality Stone is going to transform that location into nowhere. My opponent snaps just about now, and I've had enough, so we're gonna go ahead and retreat after that. Down to 99.7. This game gets to showcase one of the most powerful interactions that this deck can utilize: cloning vats plus Quinjet. So we can throw Quinjet into the cloning vats, we'll get an additional copy of the card that's totally free, gotta snap here, and then any future cards that we generate out of the cloning vats will also have their cost reduced multiple times potentially, depending on how many Quinjets we want to play this game. My opponent's going to flip over a Nightcrawler, and we're also going to get a little bit lucky in this game. The X-Mansion luck is going to turn around. My opponent is going to take a Venom, which is going to stop their Sunspot from growing, gives them 1 additional power there, and we get America Chavez, so 9 power. Now we're winning in the center location. We've got double Quinjet, and we can do whatever the heck else we want to as well. So I'll throw down this Quinjet into X Mansion because we're already having a little bit of a lead here. And then speaking of lead here, we can leader twice this game because we've got Moon Girl leader, though we could also just drop leaders into the cloning vats, or we could just play some Devil Dinos into the cloning vats as well. A lot of options on this one. Like I said, I think, you know what I might do here is just play Devil Dinosaur plus White Queen. Devil Dino into the cloning vats, grab an additional copy of that, and then use my extra 2 energy to put 6 power somewhere else. That seems pretty dang strong. I don't even think we're going to need a leader on this game because I think we're just going to have so much power from the Dino. And yeah, we can see that we're going to have a full power Dino. That's going to go up to 17 as the White Queen draws us my opponent's best card, which is Magneto. And on this turn, let's see what they played. Okay, Spider-Man, that's a little bit cheeky. Now we can't play to the Hellfire Club, and they could win that with Magneto, but we'll very easily be able to win all of the other locations. So pretty straightforward one. I would probably just wind up leadering here anyways, just to copy whatever my opponent plays since we have about the same amount of cards, and that would be a pretty easy win. Eventually, my opponent is going to retreat, and that puts us up to 99.9. We'll take a look at that in a second, but we are now super close to infinite, just 1 cube away. And I'll be honest, that definitely changes how I played this next game. I was basically thinking that whenever a cool location shows up, if it seems like a location that some deck might be able to take advantage of it. Not even us. Our hand isn't even that great for Project Pegasus here. But I was thinking, you know what, there are decks that can really take advantage of Project Pegasus, Peak, a bunch of different, like any random location like that. And if we see them, I should just snap and hope my opponent retreats on the first turn. So that's what I did, though unfortunately my opponent isn't going to snap here. They're going to play it out. They play an arrow. That's fine. We're adding about the same amount of power, a little bit more, and we're moon girling. So we now have double arrow. That definitely gives us some options for the game going forward. And we even have a leader for that final turn as well. So definitely some interesting ways to maneuver on this one, though you might notice I probably should have played Moon Girl and then played Sentinel, because I've actually clogged up my hand now that I've got 2 Sentinels here. I'm not able to draw anything cool because I can only draw Sentinels every turn as I play those out. So a little bit awkward. I thought that it would be good to have a larger hand, but I didn't quite realize how much we would be hindering ourselves here. You can still learn some lessons, even at rank 99.9. An awkward time to learn them, but we'll figure it out. My opponent plays a Mr. Fantastic into Clintar, which is a little bit awkward initially until you realize we got Starlight Citadel as one of these locations. So that's going to switch some things around and make it so that something else becomes a symbiote. Then my opponent's going to play a Shuri to tie it up over in Starlight Citadel and give themselves a pretty nice lead somewhere potentially. Clintar triggers on nothing gets symbioted, and then we're just gonna arrow here, and then my opponent's gonna play something ridiculously large, and we'll see what comes of that. But yeah, I will drop this arrow down. We still do potentially have some options here with arrow, potentially being able to make some things move around. But when my opponent plays vision, that's really going to complicate some things, because now I can't really force my opponent to play to any lanes in particular, and they could definitely find some good ways around this. And even with a leader, I don't feel super confident here. Main reason being my opponent could just use like Taskmaster and then copy their 14 power card, and then our leader won't copy their taskmaster. There were just too many ways that this goes wrong from here, and I don't want to get further down. Let's just drop back down to 99.7 and see if we can recoup from there. We are still just 3 cubes away, or 1 4-cube game. So very, very close. I can taste it. And in this game, our first location is Isle of Silence, which is pretty cool. We could potentially throw Lizard there, though we could also throw Lizard into Asgard. Getting a lead in that location is really good. Drawing cards is going to give us more options and give us bigger devil dinosaurs. And then with a priority lead, we could just Cosmo into Asgard. That sets up very well for next turn playing Maximus into that location, and also stops if my opponent tries to play any tricky on-reveal cards like Green Goblin. So now we are looking pretty good in Asgard. I'm going to go ahead and snap, and luckily for us, my opponent is sticking with it. We're just going to go for a huge lead here in Asgard, and then potentially try to win Isle of Silence or something, but I do get a little bit nervous because we can't throw Devil Dinosaur in Isle of Silence, and it might not be able to win Mojo World either because we won't have enough cards there. So if we just played Devil Dino into Mojo World this turn, my opponent could just play Professor X, and then we just wasted our Devil Dino, and that's a little bit awkward. So instead, I'm just going to play Arrow into Isle of Silence. That really prevents my opponent from doing anything too fancy with Professor X. They can still win the Mojo World, but then we're going to have a really easy time winning those other 2 locations. So I think this is a pretty good way to go about it, and I guess you can't Professor X into Isle of Silence, but what's actually going to happen here, a really cheeky play by my opponent, they Spider-Man the Mojo World, and then Arrow moves over my Spider-Man. So they have now won Mojo World while still adding 5 power to Isle of Silence. Pretty cool stuff, though I think we're going to be able to get away with a win with Leader here, and we only needed 4 cubes to get to infinite, so things are looking pretty good. I think Arrow, or Leader rather, should be able to square some things up. We'll see what my opponent played. 1 card, and it's Hobgoblin, so we're going to send that over to us. They'll send 1 back, and we will maintain our lead in 2 locations. So, thumbs up from my opponent. Thank you very much. That was able to get us infinite for the season, and like I said, you're only looking at a snapshot in this video. I used this deck to climb from rank 80 all the way up to rank 100, and I will have some more sweet clips to showcase with this deck. Like I said, I think we're going to look at 1 more game in this video, but right here, let's first take a look at that Herald of Galactus title that we just unlocked. I think I found a good one here to wrap up the video. We've got turn 1 Asgard and turn 2 Mojo World. Not great locations for this deck, and pretty good locations for an Angela deck. They can battle for Asgard early and throw a bunch of cards into Mojo World later on. Now Atlantis actually is an okay location for this deck. We can throw a massive Devil Dinosaur there later on, so that's not too shabby, but for now I'm going to throw Cosmo into that Asgard location, try to just keep my opponent honest, and they're going to throw some power there themselves. They're going to play a Bishop, which definitely threatens to win and draw some additional cards in Asgard. So I'm going to ignore that and throw Mojo World, throw Moon Girl into Mojo World. That'll give us an additional copy of Devil Dinosaur and Arrow, and we don't need to throw that into Atlantis because we'll have +5 power there if we can just solo a Devil Dinosaur. And that's kind of my plan from here. Play a big Devil Dinosaur this turn, play a big Devil Dinosaur next turn, and I think that was potentially good enough, but it's a little bit scary to let my opponent play into Lockjaw as well, especially when we can disrupt them with this double arrow draw that we have. So we're going to play this arrow and move over Mr. Negative, which now kind of complicates some things, because now I have to figure out if my opponent is going to play good cards out of the Lockjaw location, at which point I want to arrow my opponent into Lockjaw to make them get rid of those cards, or if they're going to play more cards into that Lockjaw location, so that way we want to take them out so they can't exchange those for better cards in their deck. Ultimately, because they only had one Mr. Negative turn, I'm just going to try to move their cards out of that Mojo world, and I'm going to throw Quinjet in there. So that way, hopefully, we will win Mojo World just by a factor of having more cards there. Let's see if it works. Indeed, they did play 2 cards into Mojo World that they were hoping to get rid of, and we are going to be able to take that location. They've got an Ironheart and another card with an on-reveal ability, assumedly, yeah, a Psylocke. So, there we go. Pretty fun one, I thought, to cap things off. Double arrow, always really sick. So that's going to be it for me today, and as another reminder, if you liked this video, I've got a whole bunch more sweet videos on this deck coming soon, so make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the content. But that is going to be it for me today. Thank you very much for watching. I'm No Luck's Given. Peace.